But before you do the spiel, I just still thank you.
Okay. This is Afton. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, go around the room.
Okay, I'm Afton Finley. I'm the librarian here at the Waseca Public Library. So I do the teen and adult events, and then I also am part of our digital equity team.
And you do that for just Waseca, or do you do it for the entire Sueur Waseca regional network?
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
There are region responsibilities, and then there are building specific responsibilities.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah, hello, good morning. My name is Anna Norkett-Preuss, and I work with Hannah at the state at the Office of Broadband Development. I'm a little bit newer to the state. I just started in December, and my title there is Community Engagement and Special Projects Coordinator. So again, new to the state. I did work a little bit in digital literacy a few years back as an AmeriCorps member in the Twin Cities. So it's kind of my experience with digital equity and digital access.
Hi, Anna Buckland. I'm with the Office of Broadband, formerly with State Library Services. I think I've emailed you many times, I'm sure. I know I've emailed you way too much. And I am now the Digital Equity Program Lead with the Office of Broadband.
And was the chief architect of the Minnesota's digital equity.
That's
I mean,
a very
that
nice way to put it, yeah.
that was a
I think
monster
everyone should
task.
have grandiose
Chief
titles like
architect,
this.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a monster
I
task.
wrote it
Yeah.
on my living room floor in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And now we are applying for the capacity grant to fund activities identified in the plan. I don't know what the timeline is beyond we submit it by Tuesday of next week, and then we wait several months.
So what are you guys looking for here with the library, and like what kind of information do you guys want to know? An open book?
I mean, I think what I had told Steve was that we want to hear the Waseca County story, you know, the Waseca County digital equity story.
Mm-hmm.
I know you did a ton of work during the pandemic.
Yeah.
How are things going now?
Well, I think, you know, when I first got here, we weren't doing much of anything.
Yeah.
And so we kind of tried some things, and it just really wasn't working. We had one person who was confident in teaching any sort of tech skills, and so he would go out to all of these libraries. So he had Afton's job at the time, and that was a lot of his time to go out, so he could really only do one class at a branch per month.
Mm-hmm.
And that was eating up a lot of time. And when he would go there, no one would show up, or you could only teach so many skills in the one class. And so we found that even when he was here and teaching ones where it wasn't, that people just weren't showing up. And they weren't showing up at the time that he was having the class. So he would have a class, and the next week somebody would come in and say, I want to learn this skill. And he'd say, well, we had a class this week, we don't have any plans to teach that skill for 6 months. Check back then. So it just nothing was really working. So we just decided we needed to have on-demand resources. And so we've been kind of just not doing anything as far as instruction other than on-demand as somebody came in. And those are pretty much limited to Libby or trying to help on a specific problem, not really developing a skill set as we're kind of moving forward. And so we've been trying to plan, like, what would an ideal situation be if we could really look at that? So, with that noted, I just wanna, we looked at your digital opportunity plan goals
Yes.
and tried to think, you know, how would we see, based on our experience, what would it look like?
Mhm.
So again, we have 9 libraries and only one of them has more than one person on the desk at the time. So if somebody needs help, they have to leave the desk and nobody's there to check anybody out, answer any questions, answer the phone, all those things. And 2 of those libraries, only 2 of those libraries have another staff person in the building. 5 of our libraries are open 23 hours or less a week. Staff receive no training on digital skills other than our checkout software. And the library is the only place in town to get help, tech help, if they're not enrolled in school. So that's kind of
Yeah.
the atmosphere that we have. So we were trying to think of like, what is unique about our situation as opposed to the metro? And I think we find that a lot of patrons don't, a lot of community members don't have jobs that require digital skills. So completing just some of the most basic tech skills, they just, they don't have, they have to have someone help them, whether it's us at the library or a friend, or they're trying to figure it out on their own. We find that users share their passwords allowed freely with the library staff. So again, those basic skills are not there. A lot of community members come in and there's a lot of shame in this situation, and so they come in here saying, I'm stupid, so you're gonna have to help. And they go on and on, and any sort of problem that comes up, they are visibly agitated, and you know, it's part of the task when you help them is like calming them down and being encouraging and letting them know that people, everybody has little snafus that come in while they're trying to complete tasks. You know, if staff have other job duties, they have to like maybe start and then go back to their work and then come back. In the meantime, that person has been struggling with logging in that whole time. So within 20 minutes where they are stressed out. Staff have really different skill levels. So we have some staff at a library that can troubleshoot everything. We have other staff that, you know, struggle with email. So trying to capture all of these pieces is really tricky. Patrons need larger screens for telehealth. They, most of, well, I shouldn't say most, a lot of people just have their mobile phone. And so they're trying to do telehealth on that. It would be nicer if they had a larger screen. Patrons even have to come in just to register for a shot, like a COVID shot at Thrifty Right. So just even some of those little basic parts, not even having to connect with another person, but just to register. They need more reliable internet for distance higher ed. Our most frequent digital skills questions are about how to print off our computers, how to make copies, and how to use Libby. So those are some pretty low-level skills, and so people are not developing further.
And also to go back with like having a single person working on desk if they get a phone call with a tech question, like that can eat up quite a bit of time, and there's times where we've had to say, we can't help you with this. And like, we wanna be able to help you with this, but we don't have the capacity right now to help you with this. Like, I'm just gonna throw an example out there. We had a patron, 2021 Sueur doors were still locked, and she got a printer and needed help with her printer and getting it set up with her computer, and like, we can't help you with that over the phone. Like, that's out of our skill set. Like, you don't know what kind of printer you have, what kind of computer you have, what kind of software you need to download. And so she ended up bringing her computer and printer into the library and made an appointment so we could help her get it set up. So, just an example of things that we've had to help with in the past.
There's like a kind of vulnerability that comes up, I think, with that shame.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
especially when you're in like a small town setting, like where you're always visible to your neighbors, to like go into a public building and have to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
When we did our survey for you guys, we asked, how do you most successfully learn skills? And I think the answers are slightly skewed based on, I think a lot of people involved with the school filled this survey out. But I did think it was interesting that you can see the results of that on this grid, that 64, the most popular is figuring it out on your own, then watching online videos. And then there's a huge drop before we see one-on-one. A lot of times people maybe get some help from their kids or things like that. But just to see that figuring it out on your own, well, how do we help that? How do we help people who want to figure it out on their own and don't want to come to a class? So that's kind of leading into some of the ideas of what we have been coming up with. So in the back here's like our dream wish list of what we would have. So we had termed it digital navigators. That's what many libraries use already. So this person would address home connectivity, device digital skills for community members through repeated interactions. So that there's a person and a face that people get familiar with, they trust, that they don't have to be kind of going from person to person, especially with the shame situation, that one person also knows how to help, what that person's unique issues are. Curate a collection of digital skills handouts that are regularly updated. And I mean curate, not create.
Yes.
And then along the line of people wanting to learn, figure it out on their own, curating digital skills videos and online training that, again, regularly updated. We looked at a LinkedIn Learning subscription. That could be a possibility. Available for repeated one-on-one on-demand appointments. This could be tricky with 2 counties, but I think people are willing to wait a half an hour, not 6 months, so that's better. Scheduling regular office hours, being available at community events, fairs, booths, so that this gets promoted in outside of the library, because I think people who don't normally come into the library have many digital skills needs, and they just wouldn't know about it unless you're out there. Developing email courses and in-person workshops with incentives. I think a lot of times you need to create some sort of sense of urgency when it comes to this. Otherwise people are like, well, I don't need to know that now. If you look at the next sheet, you'll see what people filled out, and I have heat mapped, so that you can see what people are looking at, what do they really want to know. And I don't feel a sense of urgency about learning about cookies and incognito mode. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow I will. So I think that some sort of incentive is necessary to get them to work on it that day. We found that with craft events too, that there has to be some sort of sense of urgency. So we were kind of looking at whether this would be certified programs with inexpensive free devices. I know the North Star has some outlets, but none in our area. I don't know if we could partner with them, create staff courses so that our staff can learn some skills when they have openings in their day. Provide outreach classes at the prison. Develop key questions to assess patrons' tech needs. I think sometimes staff don't know which questions to ask, and so I think those would be really helpful. Work with groups on creative projects. Work with organizations and businesses on assessing needs. For instance, we had a partnership. It was this, is it Green Jeans Media?
Yeah.
So we had a writing workshop for our neurodiverse adult writing group, and so they worked with Green Jeans Media to develop their creative writing project, a video that went along with it, and that turned out very cool. And I think, you know, one of your goals was to work with like a neurodiverse community, and trying to think of a way to match it. We have one. We have a project. So I thought I'd mention that. Identifying opportunities to go out to people. I know that the St. Paul Public has those like community navigators where they go out and they identified, okay, some people this community doesn't realize that they're eligible for this kind of funding. We've had people come in after layoff and need help with filling out unemployment. When we had flooding here, we were looking at how to help people with filling out forms and knowing what was available, knowing how to best treat mold and other kinds of things. I think as a parent, I would have liked to have a little help on how to deal with all of the school digital stuff, trying to figure out grades, and trying to figure out how to pay for different P's and homework, like what's due. It feels like it's a different world from when I grew up. That this person would also promote our work. So when I get done with my list of what this dream role would be, I just don't even know who could fill this role. I think it'd be really tricky to fill a role, especially if it was grant funded, because there's an end. I know that we are one of the few libraries that still circulates hotspots in our area, where we used to have over 500 devices within our 9-county library system. And when the hotspots got taken away and that grant was not refunded, there was so much community outrage that they were like, never again. I'm never gonna do hotspots again. We do a minimal amount. We did like a rollout, like this is gonna end. We prepped people for several months leading up to it. So we never saw any of that. So or maybe, Waseca and the Sueur County, people are just so chill. I don't know.
Lucky you.
But it was like a huge drop off. I think we had like 100 devices and now we're down to 20 or something like that. 25. So that is, again, tricky. I don't know who could fill that. But we kind of, based on what we're seeing, it would be great to have laptops that were paired with hotspots. It'd be great to have iPad hotspots. Roku's with streaming services paired with hotspots. I think whenever we look at new tech tools, we need to be like, okay, we gotta also have the hotspot that goes with it. We were just talking to someone last night, and they were like, oh, I'm so glad you do in-person author events because I just don't have the tools to do the virtual ones. So. And then looking at like creative projects, because one of the things that we want to do at a library is not just have people to be able to use tech, but to be able to express themselves, to communicate, to create. So I told you about the Tell Your Story event already. We have Procreate on our iPad hotspots, and we have Creative Bug, which is instruction, like craft instruction, which includes some instruction on Procreate. But again, we're not teaching any of these things. Cricut classes, creating a photo journal, creating a family cookbook, designing a poster in Canva, publishing a book with the Minnesota Library Publishing Project. These are things like we have these things available, but we're just not helping people get to the next stage and how they can use all of these tools. So that was I go really fast. So please let me know, what are you guys thinking? Are you thinking that there will be a library grant? Do you see a possibility of digital navigators?
This is all written in sand. That's my preface to this.
Okay.
So we have identified like the regional public library systems as being recipients of possible targeted non-competitive grants, as well as counties, targeted non-competitive, trying to get away from like pitting a rural county against a metro county to compete for funds, especially in the library world. That's just counterproductive, ultimately. And all of it's so vague right now still, like budget and timeline, those essentials that it's hard to talk about with much concreteness. But having your list, like your dream wish list, is really good to have. When we were working on the first draft of that plan, having options came up as something really important to everyone, that your friendly state bureaucrats don't know what it's like to be a resident of every place in Minnesota, and that's reasonable that we don't know. And that in order to make the best use of the funding that the state is getting, we have to trust local decisions and the local perspective on what will work here. So, call digital navigators whatever you want, and we're going to trust that it's right for the people you work with and try to help every day. I don't know if that answers the question. There will be funding available, and this is exactly in line with what it's for.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Rural has been a particular area of interest, just watching kind of the patterns of how funding and wealth accumulate in the state broadly, that it's often metro versus urban, or metro versus greater Minnesota, and there's a competition baked into that. And and we are trying to get away from that with this program, just because we know that that's not helping the idea of equity if the people with the grant writers keep getting the funding.
That's so true. I think that I don't even know that any other libraries within our 9-county Traverse de Sioux are thinking about digital navigators or seeing a need. I know some are teaching computer classes, but I don't know that it's anything more than like internet basics. I feel like people don't care about taking Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel classes. I think they're more concerned with how do I learn this specific digital skill right now when I need it.
Yeah.
And that is really tricky when you're trying to come up with your curriculum for, I'm gonna plan what I'm gonna do for the next 3 months and what events we're gonna hold, what classes we're gonna hold. Well, this doesn't fit in neatly with the way libraries run. So
Right, especially,
just-
solo staff situations when you have someone who needs to like eat their lunch. And also there's a crisis, because that's how it's often dealt with, right? Is like the crisis of the day. And you help the person as best you can, but that doesn't deal with the root of the issue.
And not even realizing that a library might answer those kinds of
Yeah.
of questions as well.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, for all the questions you get, there are as many, if not more, that you don't get.
Can I ask, when you have like patrons come in, do they come in with a skill they've identified they wanna learn? Like, I wanna learn to upload a form, or do they come in with a task? They're like, my doctor asked me for this form, and
More tasks.
yeah. Cause I know this, I recognize quite a few, like I used to do classroom education for North Stars and one-on-one stuff, and knowing that sometimes someone comes in and they really need to have something done, you're like, well, I can teach you what uploading means. Like, I don't care what uploading means, I just need to get this form, so how to
Yeah.
teach the skills to on the back end, so you know how to communicate that, and sometimes I know you just end up doing it for them, cause it's a little bit quicker, but.
And with that, like, thrifty weight example, like, we'll go to the library and they'll help you. Then we need all your personal information, so that's also a little tricky.
Do you find that if they come in for a task, then that is a good entry point for them to actually learn a skill, or just do the task and I'm home, I got a business, I've got things to do, and it kind of stays at that?
A little bit of both. There are some people that are interested in learning how to do it for themselves, so next time they don't need to ask for help. And then there's some that like, nope, they come in every week and I need you to scan and email this timesheet and my payroll person.
But that being said, we haven't had a curriculum that we could upsell them on. And so if we, even had like some sheets of somebody was wanting to attach a photo to their email that they're trying to email to their grandkid. Just having something like, oh, here's what else you could do. And with all the different devices, that is also tricky. Luckily, the paperclip icon is pretty universal, but
If you can see it.
yeah.
That's a bitty paperclip, yeah.
And we've had people come in and like, I want to learn more about Microsoft Word. I want a book.
Yeah.
Well, by the time the book is actually printed and we get it, it's probably already obsolete. So I pulled up that digital literacy, digital learn, I think it's called, with the videos. And I'm like, well, here's some videos for you and some activities for you to do. And she's like, well, no, I want a book. I'm like, okay. Like, well, find you a book, but like some of the stuff in the book is probably already obsolete with the updates that Microsoft has done.
Mhm.
So
I
the
think-
only book I can find was from like 2016. So.
Oh, yeah, that's a year,
Just a couple
a
years
light
old.
year ago, yeah, that's a different beast altogether. When you're like communicating with patrons or just community at large, like what strategies work well? Like when I was at Leech Lake, if we put something on the radio, it would get a ton of attention. If it was on Facebook, a ton of attention. Hang up a poster and like that poster, no one's gonna ever look at it ever. What works well with your libraries?
Hand selling.
Yeah.
I feel like it is really hard to get people's attention on any sort of platform, because you know what Facebook is like a certain demographic, and Instagram is a certain demographic, the newspaper is a certain demographic, and it's just people have to be
Willing to find things.
more proactive about trying to seek out information, and this may not be the area where they're seeking out information. So it is really tricky, and so with hand selling, you're gonna have to identify people, and that's a little tricky with this type of situation. And it really has, and then it's limited, because not everybody comes into the library, and not as frequently as one would need in order to know what's coming up each month. So I wouldn't say that we feel confident. The people that filled out the survey said Facebook was their number one, but I do not feel like Facebook is getting a ton of a connection right now, I guess.
Yeah. I think more people are turning away from Facebook, especially like those younger millennials and those like
TikTok.
But then they don't want to follow the library.
yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
So
that's hard.
Well, as a former librarian,
yeah, it just is.
Rings true.
well, it depends on the age, but you wanna.
You have a TikTok account just for following libraries?
I do no.
Okay.
I had TikTok for a while, and I said, that's
Just curious.
No, I mean, there's a certain brand where it's cool with, but when just to put some of this into context, I used to do I used to volunteer at a public library and do one-on-one training I used to call it Stump the Chump, but it would really be digital navigators. And then for my job at a different library, I would make pathfinders. And I quit doing some of that when my first kid was born. That was 25 years ago. So the things that we're looking at are the same. They're harder now because before everybody had the same phone. I mean, but now there are so many different options. There weren't tablets, and I think to a certain degree, if people really, this is a bad way to put it, but people who are really driven to learn it, they took a class 5 years ago. Now I know that doesn't give for ages, but when I did a lot of training on Fond du Lac Reservation, the first year the classes were full, and then when you get to the people who don't have the capacity, don't have the time, don't have the just mean capacity in every way to go to a class. And then it says you got to right away. We said it's the on demand.
Yeah, it's a really tricky thing. I don't know if there's it almost has to coincide with people getting broadband.
Right.
It has to coincide with
Yeah.
some other activity. The farmers that are learning their tech skills for tractors, they're learning it from
The vendor.
John Deere
Yeah.
and
The
stuff like
implement
that.
dealers.
Yeah.
And they will spend that time with them. well, I don't really wanna send a digital navigator out to somebody's house.
No.
I think that's a dangerous situation to be in. So then, what does it look like? What does a winning solution look like? And I feel like it has to be a multi-dimensional focus, and that is tricky. But you know, we don't have people coming in constantly asking for tech help.
Yeah.
So that's why that role had all these different dimensions. Like I could see them working on all kinds of different projects at different levels. Yeah, it's just really a tricky situation. Like, do people really want this?
Mm-hmm.
What do they want? Well, when they filled out that survey, we were really surprised that like one of the top ones was like figuring out what fake news is. Like, wow, I had no idea that anyone was interested based on no one taking our bookmarks about how to spot fake news. So, you know, like, where do we?
That resonates with us so strongly. Yeah.
How do we find the people that need these classes and want them?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
really, it
Right.
stumps me.
Are there any like community partners who you've found to be especially strong in this area of digital equity? Or is it more of a like sympathetic relationship with other organizations working on digital equity?
I feel like, you know, Sueur County had a lot of success, and then we had this really strong leader, and she gets out there and gets the word out, and
Formidable. You don't even have to tell me the name.
I got it. You're there.
So, you know, it's like
Yeah.
if there were champions like that in every community, then the word's out.
Yeah.
And so it's just figuring out like who those people are.
Mhm.
There was a group in Janesville that led some senior classes. You know, there were some people involved in that. So I think there are people in each community that you know can spread that information. And so more than even organizations. And like the chamber, the schools, they have been very helpful for us getting the word out about the survey that we did for you guys. Region 9 was really great with working with us on that project. There are lots of the counties, the cities, everyone's in,
Yeah.
except for the people who need the skills, I guess. Like, how do we get to them? So it's getting all of the partners to get the word out to the right people, I think would be the game changer.
When I was at State Library Services, one of my coworkers and I, Verena, did some listening sessions with library directors, and Stacy was one of them. I think that was the one where we made you draw things while listening to like my iTunes.
I remember that now.
Yeah, and like the purpose of it was partly we like didn't have enough guidance at the time. We had no supervision. But we were like, we're gonna try to understand what library governance looks like in like all of these different system types. I was blathering to Anna on our drive down. I was like, Waseca-Le is interesting because it's 2 counties and it's, you know, they operate as a consolidated system, but they're in a federated system, but it's, you know, 2 counties. That doesn't happen.
We're the only one.
Yeah, you are. Man,
Is that right, in the whole state, we're the only one that does 2 counties?
Yeah. If something works in Waseca-Le, it'll probably work elsewhere, just from a governance standpoint. But one of the things that came up during those listening sessions was in rural communities and small towns, like, and maybe you were the one who mentioned this, that like there is no like go-to organization necessarily. It's like you have to know who the top 10 people are. Like, who are those top 10 people who are at everything in every community and who know the right people and are, you know, sometimes a little bit of a gossip, because that's what it takes to spread information.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think too about, like, you have 9 libraries in 2 counties, and so you have to learn across 9 locations who those people are, like individuals, and that's hard.
I would say that Steve's daughter ran this organization in town, and they had a really great strategy
Yeah.
where they would talk to people and say, who are 5 people I should talk to?
Mm-hmm.
And then they would go and meet those 5 people. They'd ask the same question. They'd also lavish you with praise. Like, I've never been more praised than by the people in that work with them. And so, like, that is a really, like, I recommend that for people who are new to their role in that community.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a really smart way to get connected with people. So that would be one thing that could be replicated in any community to find those 10 people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't bring enough praise. I'm so sorry. You're doing great.
It was a little uncomfortable. Okay. They're like, oh, I want to be you. What? Whoa. Yes, you. I've got some problems. Now I'm blushing. I'm like, I was never going to tell anyone what they had said to me.
Well, you were one of those 5 people that you must meet.
Yeah, you must have
You're just so amazing.
Well, I think people were desperate to try to find a name, and I just was around. But anyway, it was very, I just thought it was a really smart way to connect and to get to people quickly, and to also set up meetings with people who you might feel like, oh, they don't want to talk to me.
Yeah.
How do I have an in? I don't have a project.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was a way to really connect quickly with people too. Yeah. I don't know if that's a strategy of the organization or.
Well, I think when I was in college, I worked in the library and I worked at the bar, and they'd want to survey people, and I'd say, "Would you give me some of those surveys? I'll bring them to the bar."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's how you reach different people, and they'd sort of laugh at us. I'm serious. Those, I can tell you for sure, half those people have not. But then they're like, "Oh, you work at the library too?" I'm like, "Yeah, Tuesdays you can come."
I'm also realizing now that I have met with a couple of those ACC fellows who praised me a lot. And then I've asked, like, who else should I talk to?
Yeah.
It works,
It's-
though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets you also on board with them, and you're like rooting for them.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And then I felt a little manipulated at the end, but
Right.
still, I was like,
have a lot to think
I
about.
still like that.
Right. I felt competent in that 20-minute call.
Stacy, you know, one of the things that I enjoyed when you and I first talked was what the stories that you were telling about during the height of the COVID days, and what you did. I mean, a lot of innovative stuff here, and some of it, you know, caused a little trouble about folks maybe abusing some of the services that you were trying to set up. But I mean, could you share some of those things? Because to me, I found that really innovative of what, you know, hey, difficult times created difficult solutions, but you found a few.
Well, we had a big grant from State Library Services to do this big community fairy tale and folklore festival.
Oh, I remember that.
And it was unlike anything that and then we realized we were going to have to completely redo everything. And so we immediately started doing virtual events. And like before, most libraries were doing it. And we worked hard to get hotspots right away. What are some other things that I'm trying to think of digital.
We created a bug series.
Oh yeah, we had.
And that went virtual.
That was really interesting. So we this creative bug is these digital classes, and so we had people pick up supplies, and then we created like this little community of people learning how to do this one like sketchbook series. So we would meet weekly and we would be doing these art projects together. So Afton would lead and she'd be all chatty, and so we were talking socially.
Sometimes I was chatting just to myself, but
Because people were already muting,
yeah.
turning the camera off
Yeah.
right away. But it also like gave us an opportunity to connect with people in both of our 2 counties, and that we would normally not mix with because it would be just at that location that you would, and being able to, like, she would stop the video and then we would do our sketchbooking and then we would share our work and then we would praise each other. And it just, I think it was such a positive experience. And I don't think a lot of people were doing that at that time, no. So that was a really helpful one.
We had, with our Fairy Tale and Folklore Festival, we were able to get other authors that we may not have been able to contact in Waseca, so that was really cool. Some very big nationally known authors and
People around the world
around
attended.
the world attended.
Yeah.
Like one of our children's authors, I had someone coming in from India, and I was like, "Hi, Zoom bomber era," and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like,
Oh, yeah.
we were just kind of chatting. It's me and a bunch of like 12, 13-year-olds chatting. I'm like, "Where are you guys from?" And you're like thinking like, "Oh, I'm from Waseca. I'm from Sueur. I'm from Janesville." And it's like, "Well, I'm from India," and I'm like,
What time is it?
"That's awesome
Yeah.
that we are reaching people across the world, but is this like for real? Like, are you just are you gonna like be a Zoom bomber? Like." And they were like so excited. We had people from Canada, people from the UK joining us.
And there were some amazing conversations that happened, like
Mhm.
authors connecting that would have never connected,
Yeah.
and like, oh, one of them was like, oh, if I could just somehow line up some time with you, I feel like I would hit another level.
Wow.
Writing, if we could just keep, and we also we were able to support some businesses. So there's a mixer, like what are they?
Sweet Haven
Sweet Haven
Tonics.
Tonics out of New Ulm started their business during COVID, and we were able to distribute like some of her tonics, pick up at the library, and then she talked about how to mix her story, and that
We gotta make a mocktail with the time.
and we had recipes. They got their own little customized
Book class.
book class.
And then actually my mom at the time owned a small business and she picked up their like tonic line after that.
Mhm.
So I was like, wow, we need to try this. This is
They've
delicious.
blown up,
Yeah.
and it's all due to our
I think so.
That's where every great success story starts, is the public library.
Of course.
Most
There
of
are
them
just
anyway.
there are things like that
Yeah.
you came up with, I guess.
Yeah, we had an author panel that was absolutely crazy. We had a romance panel. And we had Abby Jimenez, Lynn Hunting, and Waseca-Le Adams. And just like hearing, like, I don't think any of them had ever met. And like beforehand, I'm in the Zoom with them. It was just us before I let anyone else in. And I'm like, I need to stop them from talking so we can start their event. But I don't want to interrupt them because they're just like,
Right.
I was just like amazed just to listen to them
Yeah.
and like just their takes on things.
It's such a time of like intense disconnect, with those
Yeah.
opportunities to like connect with someone who you didn't live with.
Yeah.
It's just
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
exciting.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I mean, you were doing a lot of really creative, neat stuff, and you know, you're trying to make sure that those who weren't able to access, either because they didn't have technology or they didn't have a subscription to broadband, that they could come in here and access. Some of the school kids come in here and making, you know, this was their home base, this is what they were using.
Yeah, we had quite a few kids in the park a few times using your Wi-Fi to do their distance learning, and when they like knock on the door and they're like, "Do you have an outlet?" And yes, get our extension cords out. And
Cause this is the park right out here.
There also there have been at times some homeless groups that have been here, and that has caused some issues. Because they wanna party all night, and the cops don't want them to party all night. But they're here because we have our wireless on 24/7. So. If anything else.
Does your Wi-Fi bubble extend outside the building in all of the branches? Or are there any that are more
yeah,
restricted?
ours goes across the street. I walked it one day just to see how
nice.
far it would
Yeah,
go.
that's good to know.
And so it goes far back into the park and around.
And that's still the case today?
I believe so.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I was like, how far does this actually reach? And so I walked across the street and could get it from there, and
Yeah.
walked around the park, and so it was great to be able to see that we could provide for a lot of people.
Just, I don't wanna dominate at all, but you know, your digital navigators have, are the schools and the churches keen about that? Because in my idealistic world, I like to imagine like the school superintendents would love to see this as part of the community service that students would be expected to, you know, engage in, or one of the options that they could engage in. And then the churches, you know, I gotta believe that they're also kind of seeing people being lonely or being left behind or not accessing government services or unable to fill out a government form for housing or healthcare, whatever. I mean, what's been your lived experience there? Maybe I'm giving the system too much credit. I don't know.
Do you have thoughts right off the bat?
I don't have any thoughts. I can see where using like the schools to get word out, or
For
the church-
promotion.
yeah, for promotion, even the churches, and knowing just they know they're
I think they would probably be excited about it. We have connected. We used to partner with the schools and bring some of our computational thinking tools like coding robots and things like that out to the schools. And then they developed a more complex program so that by the time kids are that age now, they have developed past that.
Sure.
So we no longer partner with them. I don't know, it seems to me like the schools kind of go back and forth. So sometimes we have good connections with them and sometimes we could improve that. Yeah.
How are we doing on time?
We're okay on time. We got here early, but you know, we should probably get rolling pretty
I
soon.
don't want to
Yeah.
consume your whole day.
Yeah. And we kind of scheduled it this way so that, you know, Stacy, when we were planning your trip, Stacy was articulate, and I thought it was good. Rather than just trying to show all the superstar activities of the county, we kind of wanted to just root it in reality about like,
Yes,
okay,
please. kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these are some of the real
These
challenges.
are the superstar
Yeah.
stories. These are what kept kids busy and moms
Right.
saying, dad saying, everybody,
Yeah.
and it's the heart of the community.
And you've scored some home runs here. To me, the library here, the way you all performed during a tough time. And talking with the schools, I know that, for a bunch of kids, they didn't need any because they already had a good connection at home and their parents are wealthy enough and the kids are smart enough and they're active enough. But there was a whole other cohort that didn't have that. And I know the schools were relying a lot on the library.
Somewhat, because they had their own, like, the Traverse to Sioux Library Cooperative was funneling them
Yeah.
hotspots directly.
Yeah,
So there were different ways of, but, anyone knows that one hotspot isn't gonna cover a household when you want. They've got 2 parents on Zoom, you've got a kid who's trying to
Yeah.
go on Zoom, and then you've got a gamer in the family, like, multiple hotspots.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And then, to me, the homeless populations, and the food bank is just down the corner. And folks coming in for medical care and trying to access medical care when they don't have coverage. I mean, you're kind of found some way of reaching the homeless that a lot of other groups are not. And with that comes, of course, some baggage, but that's the reality of life.
we've had great relationships with the homeless
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
And there was one that had some issues, but ultimately, I feel like even if you're a difficult patron,
Right.
we are here to serve you.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah, and that, to me, that universal service is the forte of the library system. Because, your door is open for everybody. I'm talking to the ones who know that.
It's very affirming.
Well, no, but it's true. I mean, we're all,
Yeah.
my mom and dad had 9 kids, and I can tell you that this library was the source for my continuing education. I mean, this is, mom would buy groceries, and, I didn't realize it at the time, but she needed the space in the car to put groceries, so she would drop us all off here.
Unintended children at the library.
Yeah, kids at the library. How romantic. But,
Intergenerational.
that's the way we were reading books and stuff that we'd never had otherwise. And it was great.
My mom's personal business was here. The library was around the corner, and I'd be like, "Mom, it's 10 a.m. I'm going to the library," and get on my bike with my basket and ride on over and get my books and ride back to the store. And an hour later, I'd be like, "All right, Mom, I'm going back to the library. I need more books." Cut me off at some point, but
we also have this woman who was coming in because her husband had started picking up the trombone again, and she needed some peace and quiet.
Some peace and quiet.
That wasn't you, was it, Steve?
Well, I did play the trombone. My story, Mom left us at the library, went and got groceries, went home, cooked a meal, and it was only when we sat down for tables, she said, "I forgot 4 of them at the library."
So you all get extra.
And we're there at the library. I don't know if Mom's showing up or not. Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.